We're asking people to think about what they don't normally think about. We throw something away because we don't want to think about it. I mean, maybe precisely because we don't want to think about it. You don't expect rubbish to be beautiful. An object brought into a gallery or a museum and placed on a plinth is given a certain kind of status. It's given an exalted status the second that it's brought into the gallery. So the rubbish collection was in two phases, and in the first phase, every single thing that was thrown out by the Science Museum in a single month was documented. And in the second phase of the project, invited back for an exhibition of materials.
The rubbish collection is part of our climate changing programme, which is a series of thought-provoking exhibitions and events exploring climate science and sustainability. We've been looking to work with Joshua for quite some time. His practice is really exciting, the way that he engages the audience and gets them activated and participating in his projects. Rubbish and sustainability is a very difficult subject for us to tackle as a museum through our collections and things. So to bring in an artist brings a completely unique viewpoint and a creative response to those subjects.
The rubbish came into a purpose-built archiving space. The bags were brought onto tables opened up by staff, volunteers and members of the public. The objects in the bags were laid out as artistically as people wanted to make their display, and then they were photographed.
The Science Museum generally whenever I've been here, it kind of deals with sort of big artifacts from history and sort of items which there's only one of in the world or something which is regarded special like that, whereas this was sort of dealing with rubbish.
I like the idea of rooting through people's bins, but also I just wanted to experience what it would be like, because it was something I'd never done before.
The sheer volume of rubbish, I knew there was going to be a lot, but seeing it day by day and seeing all the photographs build up every day and doing my volunteer shifts and seeing the amount of the sheer number of bags we had to deal with from the cafes alone, that was quite shocking. There were some things that I just never would have expected to find in the rubbish. The amount of clothes, including underwear, that was a bit weird.
Some people really got into creating a beautiful picture with some of their rubbish. Like there was a guy who made a ship.
Quite a lot of people were just generally disgusted, which I guess isn't that surprising. But once they got over the fact that there was the smell and the general bags of rubbish being sorted through, they tended to get very engaged with the project. Lots of food waste could be it made you quite angry at times to see all of the uneaten food still in its packaging that are just being thrown out. But also the sheer quantity of food waste that gets thrown out.
It was like, what is this? Why is the Science Museum sorting its rubbish in public? And then as they understood the project, people were either disgusted or very keen to get stuck in. It was like polar opposites. But even those people that were disgusted, if you could persuade them to get involved, actually there was a transformation. You can see that transformation. And people would literally spend hours sorting rubbish with us. The rubbish was then rebagged up and sent onwards on its journey, either to recycling or incineration. Most of the material in terms of volume, we followed down the recycling process for a period of time and invited it back for an exhibition of materials. Or they're not transformed at all, they're just presented exactly as we found them in the rubbish.
Phase 2 of the exhibition allows us to look at the rubbish on an equal footing with other objects in the museum's collections, like Stephenson's rocket or the first computer.
When people come in, if they understand that what they're looking at is the rubbish, Science Museum rubbish, there's this kind of wonder that rubbish could be so inviting, and they start to disinter, they start to kind of search out the human stories. Before we started shifting through the rubbish, we imagined that we would just be kind of wading through kind of piles of gunk. But what we were not prepared for were the amount of human stories that arose from the rubbish. And some of those stories were incredibly personal. We found love letters, we found notes to loved ones, we found even things like a pregnancy test that was a negative result pregnancy test, whether or not that was something that was positive for that person or whether they were relieved or whether they were upset. All the steel that survives the incineration process, all that is directly recycled, is now in a steel bright bar. It's called a bright bar. It's 3/4 of a ton of steel. We've also got blocks of aluminium cans. We've got all the electrical waste that was thrown out, which includes 3 fridges and a dishwasher, endless batteries, 3 kettles, a couple of fans, quite a lot of torches. And this is just from 1 month from one institution, which is kind of staggering. The sludge cakes, that is the human waste, the sewage waste. So Thames Water measured the amount of water that came through the drains, and from that they can ascertain the amount of sewage. There's money, real money that was thrown away. A kind of whole medicine cabinet worth of pharmaceuticals. That was one thing that surprised us, how many pills were thrown out.
I thought it'd be pretty interesting and pretty cool to look at, but then when I saw it all come together and saw the finished outcome, I was just blown away, really.
On a purely aesthetic sense, it's amazing how attractive you can make rubbish in an aesthetic sense. In a deeper sense, I must admit I wasn't perhaps the most environmentally aware person beforehand, but now I see with my own eyes just the sheer weight and scale of the stuff that we throw away. I think it's made me think, actually. I'm a lot more careful now about not just chucking everything down the dustbin without thinking.
I really hope that people will reconsider before they throw something away, or at least give thought to it. It doesn't just magically disappear. So the transformation that happens is the transformation of understanding of what you're looking at. And in a way, that's what my role has been in this project as an artist, is to kind of throw a different kind of frame onto stuff that exists in the world already.
So in terms of the logistics of the project, it has been quite complicated and very unusual for the museum. Just in terms of it having engaged with not only our 500 staff, all of our contractors, and I think it was 281,000 visitors that came into the museum during the live participative phase of the project. But once people understood the scope of the project, people were really excited about making it happen.
I've been really delighted by the way that the Science Museum has embraced this project, and they've taken a risk with it. And what the project has done, I think, is asked a lot of questions about how the Science Museum deal with their waste. I also think it's asked questions about how the Science Museum can work with art and what artists can do for science.
We're already looking at ways to kind of gather all of the stuff that we've learned about the rubbish. We know that there are already some really positive processes that we're putting in place, like segregating our food waste in offices and cafes. But it also showed up areas where we could do things an awful lot better. We can encourage the public to recycle more within the building and things like that. And we obviously need to make that process easier for the public to encourage them to do it. So there are definitely certain areas which we'll be pushing to make improvements. And so I'm sure the project will have a lasting legacy.
What is so kind of awesome about this project has been seeing the volume, the amount of waste, of unnecessary waste that is thrown out. And I think everybody that's been involved in the project has had to reconsider their own relation to their own rubbish. And I know that that's happened for me, absolutely.